So, okay, thank you. I'd like to call this meeting of the Concord Select Board to order on October 24th, 2022. And as usual, we'd like to start with the consent agenda.
Okay, move to approve the consent agenda.
Do I have a second?
Yes, second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye, thank you.
And our thanks to the Friends of the thanks to the Friends of the Free Concord Public Library for their gift to the library staff professional development gift account. Okay, now to the town manager's report.
Okay, thank you. Last week, our new police cruiser, the Tesla, was put in service after a very long time in getting that outfitted.
It looks sharp.
It does look sharp, and I think at least the police department is hoping to have more of these in the future. We would like to again extend our thanks to Jim and Judy Terry for their generous donation, which allowed for the purchase. There's also a note in here that over the 6-year period of fiscal 16 to fiscal 21, due to the influx of hybrid and electric vehicles at the police department, there was a 30% reduction in the use of gasoline.
Yeah.
So I think that was notable. Yeah. Also would like to mention that last week, our safety officer, Inspector Ron Holsinger, attended a school bus safety training program. We had another volunteer project at Haywood Meadow, sponsored by our Natural Resources Division last week. We have our new hybrid ADA accessible trolley in service. I think I might have mentioned that last week. We also have a trolley tracking program available, so you can see where the trolley is. Helpful, especially if you're looking to ride the trolley.
It also looks cool.
It does.
Yeah,
Looks like a
A
trolley.
different way than the Tesla, but it does.
Yeah.
It's a hybrid
Yes.
though.
It is a hybrid. Because we're doing this demonstration project, it was difficult for us to get a trolley. We did know maybe about a month ago that there was a trolley that was coming our way, but we wanted to keep that under wraps until it was actually here. Until November, and then, we'll decide whether or not we'll continue with this program. And if we continue, then we can have our own hybrid accessible trolley that may be a different color, even though.
Sorry for the interruption. I
That's
know we
okay.
normally save our
That's
questions
okay.
till the end. Okay.
So there's a lot of information from our economic vitality and tourism, as there always is. A lot of great things happening there, a lot of new tours that have been scheduled, and lots of visitors to the community. And we thank the efforts, particularly of our EVT manager, Beth Williams. We had a COVID booster vaccination clinic for town employees last week. We did that in conjunction with the health division and a pharmacy in Acton. There's some information about the number of building permits issued and the inspections. There's quite a bit of activity in that division this month. The Community Preservation Committee met on October 18th, and they reviewed the town applications for CPA funding, which are detailed in the report. Our Festival of Authors program at the library is it's well underway. I think it's half over at this point. There's a lot of great programming, including the issuance of the Ruth Ratner Miller Memorial Award for Excellence in American History. I did not know that the Friends presented that award on an annual basis in memory of Dr. Ruth Ratner Miller, who was a founding member of the Holocaust Commission and Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C., and her son is a resident of Concord. There's quite a write-up on the drop-off, swap-off event. That was a great success, done over a couple of days. I think people appreciated having the swap-off part of it. That was something that we haven't had, I guess, in the last couple of years. There's information about the fuel assistance programs that are available to residents. And we would ask any Concord resident who is in need of fuel assistance to reach out for help in securing some through the 3 programs that are mentioned here. Residents under the age of 60 should contact Bonnie Wilbur, our community services coordinator, and anyone over age 60 can obtain service through the Council on Aging. Information in the report about activities at the Recreation Department. I did want to highlight that they are offering a free lifeguarding training class to anybody who is interested in becoming certified as a lifeguard. That is a great opportunity. As somebody who has paid for two kids to go through that program, it's pretty expensive. So that's a nice thing, and we are in desperate need of lifeguards at Beatty. Our Recreation Department hosted the Massachusetts Recreation and Parks Association Northeast Regional Meeting last Friday, and there's a nice write-up about the 2025 committee meeting that was held at the museum a week ago on Sunday, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yes, any questions for the town manager?
I have a quick question. So Carrie, the drop-off swap-off is always really popular. Have they ever thought about moving that someplace outside of the center of town, given all the traffic congestion with the tourism, and especially in October?
I certainly can pass that along. I'm not sure
mess.
that I've heard any discussion about moving it, but I do know it generates a lot of activity.
It does,
so we
yeah.
could certainly look at that.
Thanks.
I think we could do musical chairs with the mics,
right.
by the way.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think we just pass them this way. Oh, it doesn't work.
Okay,
So if you pass this one.
I don't need to.
no, pass it.
Oh, no, I see.
There we go. Thanks very much. Okay, any other questions for the town manager? Yes.
Right,
Terry.
so following up on the trolley, it really looks good in the picture, and Mary and I wrote it a month ago or about, and I'm really excited there's tracking software now, because it took us a while to figure out where exactly it was.
Yeah.
And it does look really attractive. My question is, that new grant that they applied for, the regional grant, that this was a pilot for that. If we get that regional grant, then will the trolley be part of that program? Or is it still a separate program?
No, I think the intent is for it to be part of the program. I'm not sure that we've applied for that grant yet, but I think we're getting close to when that application opens up, if we're not there yet.
Okay.
And speaking of grants, there was the grant application to get technical assistance relative to the 2229 Main Street. Did we apply for that? Because I believe that the deadline is now passed, right?
We did. That went in, I think it was just last week.
Okay,
that
because
that
I
went
did
in.
get a question on that. Great. Any other questions? All right. So just for the chair's remarks, just briefly, we are nearing the end of the first half of our year as select board members in terms of between the last town meeting and the next one. So next meeting, I will have a brief review of our progress relative to our annual goals, so sort of the halfway mark. But I also think that we should consider in that discussion, considering what happened at the last select board meeting, the strategic role that the select board could play going forward in our affordable housing initiatives, because clearly we need a plan B at this point.
I think that's a great idea. And when you say the next meeting,
Oh, and so I should say the next regular meeting. So October 31st, we will be gathering to close the town meeting, the special town meeting warrant. And that should be a very brief meeting. I think we should be able to meet over Zoom for that. And we actually do need a time certain for that, I think. So actually, it might be worth asking right now when people are available next Monday for such a meeting. I will say that the meeting with town council to review the warrant will be at 10 a.m. Next Monday, I believe now. So it should be after that.
Well,
So would noon be a time? on
noon
Monday?
would be great. I'm
Any
going
other-
to be out of town and actually doing Halloween with my grandkids, so the evening is not good that.
Right. Well, I think that was why initially I think Chris had put 6:30 on the 31st, and I thought, well, unless we want to show up in costume, you know.
That's good.
This
So
is my costume. 12 works for me, noon.
noon?
Fine.
Noon by Zoom?
Noon,
Yeah,
noon on Monday, the 31st,
that's right.
to just vote.
Just
the
to
warrant.
vote to close the warrant. Yeah. Okay,
Yep.
excellent.
Well, I think we might have to
Order the
vote to
warrant.
accept whatever articles there are and then close it.
Oh,
The warrant is closing on Friday, the 28th at 12:30.
okay,
And you'll
so
be
we vote
ordering-
to order the warrant articles. I'm sorry.
Okay.
That's what we do. Yeah. And so then they can go to publish the warrant. That's the idea. Okay. So now let's move to our first major agenda item for the evening, and that is Jean Goldsberry, who is here for National Disability Month, I believe, to tell us about the work of the Minuteman ARC organization and other activities in town. So let us know.
Great, thank you very much. Jean Goldsberry, 1832 Main Street in Concord. And I am also the head of Minuteman ARC. So do I need to say next to move to the next slide?
That's good, because I think the person advancing them is out of the room.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
I mean, unless Shannon's taken that over, but no, I think it's correct. Yeah.
Okay, we can, next, please.
All right.
So October is National Disability Employment Awareness Month. This is a month that is prescribed by the US Department of Labor, and it's been going on for 77 years, believe it or not. This year, each year, the DOL has a contest for a poster for the year. And this year, this is the winner of that contest and the poster that depicts disability employment. Next. So employment rates are vastly different between people with disabilities and people without disabilities. People who do not have disabilities have more than double the employment rate of people with disabilities. And we can look a little bit at why. Next. We find that many people with a disability live in poverty, or maybe just barely above the poverty level. It's 2.5 times as common for people with disabilities as for non-disabled people. Typically, people receive lower wages, and often they work fewer hours, and that may be for a variety of factors. It partly might be because their disability may impact on their availability to work full-time. They may not have the stamina or the strength to work 40 hours a week or 8 hours a day. Probably the biggest factor is that people face losing benefits if they earn more than $1,350 per month. Not very many people can live on $1,350 per month. And people with disabilities cannot have more than $2,000 in savings, or they risk losing their benefits, which it's a problem for people losing their financial benefits, but it's an even bigger problem if people lose their healthcare benefits through Mass Health. And as a result of lower wages and so forth, 3 times as many people with disabilities really face food insecurity. And we see this nationwide. We hear it from our friends at places like Open Table. Then they have poor healthcare outcomes. They already have healthcare issues, likely that have caused, or mental health issues that have caused them to become disabled in the first place, and then their nutrition is worse. Next. So one of the things many years ago, many years ago, that the US Department of Labor tried to do to help, that it was a help for a while and now is really seen as a detriment, is a sub-minimum wage certificate. This is a law that allows a nonprofit organization to pay people below minimum wage. And usually what this is involved is some very simple rote kinds of tasks in a workshop sort of setting, where people might be putting a piece of paper in an envelope, or they might be using a counting device to count out a certain number of items and put them in a little plastic bag for screws and nuts and bolts, things like that. Or they might be putting a label on something. And there are rules about how people get paid based on the productivity of a non-disabled person. But typically, people who are being paid under the 14C subminimum wage laws are paid vastly below minimum wage. People who work in workshops typically work about 30 hours a week, and oftentimes take home something like $50 or $60 a week. Yeah, it's vastly below. There are 13 nonprofit organizations in Massachusetts that have the 14C certificates. Minuteman Arc did have one long ago, and actually in terms of workshop, that ended in 1999. And since 2013, we have only paid at or above minimum wage. And a number of our workers do earn substantially above minimum wage. So they're able to support themselves and sometimes help a family as well. Again, it is a federal law. It's become less and less and less popular as wages have risen over time, and people with disabilities have become more common in the workplace. Next. Next. Oh, thank you. Can you back up one? Thank you. So a lot of this comes from systemic ableism that employers may have, or the general population, that people don't want to work or they're lazy. I've had, over the years, many employers say to me, well, people with disabilities are out sick more often, and actually they are not. Typically, someone with a disability who gets a job really wants that job, and they really want to work, and they really want to come to work. They will really show up much more frequently than people without disabilities. We're really, really fortunate here in Concord. Concord employers really embrace people with disabilities, and Concord has a long history of employing individuals from Minuteman Arc. There are 7 employers in Concord that employ 19 people from the people that we serve. And you all can take a role in this just by encouraging employers to continue to hire people with disabilities, whether it's someone from Minuteman Arc or someone from the community that may have a disability. Next. So these are the Concord employers that employ our folks. Concord Academy has 2 people. Concord DPW is a public-private partnership among the West Concord Green Thumbs, the Concord DPW, and Minuteman Arc. So the Green Thumbs get the beautiful baskets of flowers that decorate West Concord, and people from Minuteman Arc water those flowers throughout the season, Monday through Friday. DPW assists by watering on the weekends when it's hot and dry, like a lot this summer. So we have, it's a rotating crew. We try to give people some experience by working on a crew with other individuals so that they've got a job coach, a staff person with them all the time as they're learning the job and they're learning work skills and they're learning the things all of us have to do when we go to work. Like yes, you really have to listen to what your supervisor says, and you really need to do what that person tells you, whether you want to or not. And you need to put your cell phone away, those kinds of things. So the crew that works on the watering the flower baskets is a group of 10 people that rotate through. There's a person who's working in the town clerk's office right now, assisting with mailing out the ballots and collecting ones as they've come in. We have 3 people that work at Crosby's. If you frequent Crosby's, you've probably met them. They're front and center. We have a person that works at New England Deaconess in the laundry room. You see Caitlin here working at Trashology. And we have a gentleman who for many, many years has run the mailroom at Hanscom Field for the Army Corps of Engineers. Next. So we also have to get people to work. Most of our individuals do not drive. We only have 2 individuals who have driver's licenses. So we have 33 vans that take people both from home to Minuteman if they're coming to the day programs, or for many folks directly from home to their work, wherever that might be. And we unfortunately have to drive a lot of miles using gas power, where in our long range plans, it's to really convert to electrical power. And my far off dream is for us to have a solar powered kind of a carport that could charge electrical vehicles. But we're a ways off from that. Right now, even getting any kind of van is difficult, because during the pandemic, Amazon and UPS bought all the vans for several years. Yeah. They bought production through 2022. Next. So we really are proud to be here in Concord. We're proud to be with employers that are welcoming and want people with disabilities to work for them, and for the many organizations within the community that really support us in many, many ways. Next. So a little background on Minuteman ARC. We have been around for 64 years, and we really work hard to improve the lives of children and adults. When we were founded in 1958, it was by a group of families, and that's a typical kind of story for the beginning of an ARC. Families in the 50s and early 60s had only one choice if they didn't want to keep their child at home, or they felt like the child needed more than they could give them, and that was to institutionalize them. There weren't community services, so families got together, and this little group of families started a nursery school for their young children. And then, of course, over time, the children got older, they needed more different things. They became adults, they needed lots of other kinds of services. So Minuteman ARC has grown to offer a variety of programs. We're a true lifespan organization, which is fairly unusual. Typically, an organization might serve children or adults or teens, but not the whole gamut. And we really serve people throughout Eastern Mass. Next. A surprising fact for a lot of people, we're the 4th largest employer in Concord. Wow. Yeah, wow. 230 employers. Of course, Emerson Hospital is the largest, and the town of Concord and Concord School Systems, and then Minuteman ARC. So, you know, we bring a lot of economic viability to the town as well. Next. At this point, we serve about 1,300 children and adults. We have 9 sort of core communities that Minuteman has always been involved with. They're basically along the Route 2 corridor, but over time, we've grown in terms of area that we cover. We serve people from Leominster and Fitchburg, from Burlington and Billerica, from as far south as Dedham. And for some of our services, our recreation in particular, if you can get to us, no matter how you get to us, if you can get to us, you can come. It doesn't matter. You could live in New Hampshire or Rhode Island or whatever. You can join our recreation services as long as you can get to us. We are not serving as many people as we did before the pandemic, and that's due to pandemic number 2, which is staffing shortages. We are about 87% in our employment program and about 80% in our day habilitation, which is a more medically based program. Our board of directors did vote for 2 significant pay increases for staff in fiscal year 22, and that meant that the lowest paid direct care staff person, which would be an asleep overnight person in one of our group homes, makes at least $18 an hour. So it's actually a living wage that somebody can manage to support themselves on. But like every employer across the city, the state, the country, we're struggling.
Yeah.
And about 12% of the people we serve are on the autism spectrum. Next. So we have 7 separate programs, starting with early intervention, which is for children from birth to age 3. Who would guess at age 3 you're too old for something? Early intervention offers physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, and developmental services for those youngest children. And it's an amazing service, really, honestly. Of the children who come into early intervention, when they leave at age 3, or sometimes before, because they've sort of graduated in terms of what they needed to accomplish, half of those children don't need further services. So a child that's got a disability, a delay, whatever, the therapists have been able to work with them and really turn that around. That has made a difference for that child for their whole life and the life of the family as a whole. And also it saves our school systems literally hundreds of thousands of dollars. When you think about educating a person from age 3 all the way to age 22 in special ed, it really has saved people enormous amounts of money and saves the taxpayers. If you ever have an opportunity to vote for a place for funding to go, that is probably the very best way that you can capitalize your tax dollars. So for the other half of children that do still need some additional support, we developed Extra Steps Pediatric Therapies, and that program is about 4 years old now. They started right before the pandemic, and now they're back fully engaged. And this again offers physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, socialization skills, which are really important, especially for children on the autism spectrum, feeding groups, and a variety of other kinds of therapy programs. Our newest program also involves children, and that is Timbernook, which is an outdoor experiential program for children that runs all year long. And so if you have a kind of yucky day like today, you put on your rain boots and your raincoat and you go out and you play. It's all outdoors in the woods. It's in the Boy Scout camp in Sudbury now. We moved there this summer. We were in Carlisle for several years. And the idea is to get kids outdoors, experiencing nature, away from screens, and being able to build their muscles, build their vestibular development, your inner ear that lets you know where in space your body is and whether you're sitting upright or leaning over, and learn social skills to work together, because they work together to solve problems. And it's a wonderful program. It has been outrageously popular throughout the pandemic and continues to be so. And we offer it for children starting at 15 months. We have a 15 months through age 4 with a caregiver. We have age 4 through age 7, and we have 7 to 12. Recreation and family services involves that time sort of after school, after work, that, you know, for all of us, we work or we do what we do during the day, we're at home at night, but in between, there are things that we do. Maybe we go to the gym, maybe we take a class, maybe we go have coffee with friends. And our recreation program offers those same kinds of things. We have yoga and boot camp and basketball and bowling and arts and crafts and ceramics, a whole variety of things that people can do in that late afternoon toward early evening timeframe. And the family services provides trainings for families on all manner of things. It might be transition as your child moves out of school into the adult world. It might be something about wills and how to set up a trust for your child. Last week we had a session on residential options. It was not an infomercial for Minuteman Arc like this is a little bit, but it just explored a variety of residential options and ideas and got feedback. We had about 50 people that attended that via Zoom. Dayhabilitation is a daytime program for people with developmental disabilities who also have physical needs. And many of the people in that program use wheelchairs. Some of them are total care. Some need to be fed. Some do not communicate verbally. Doesn't mean they don't communicate. We understand them pretty well, but they don't use words. And that program is really known for working with people to improve their physical health. Everyone in that program has a physical goal, and that might be for someone in a wheelchair to get out of their wheelchair into a stander that helps them stand up and helps them to build some core strength. It might be on an exercise bike or walking on a treadmill. It might be using some light weights, again, to build muscle strength, but everyone has a goal, and everyone who uses a wheelchair is out of their wheelchair at least 40 minutes every day, which is really important to prevent sores and so forth that people can get. Employment services, we talked a little bit about employment, and in addition to the Concord employers, we have another 17 employers that employ people from Minuteman Arc, but they might be in Acton or Stowe or Littleton or wherever. In our residential services, let's go to the next slide. Next, yeah. Residential, there are 4 different kinds of living options that we provide. Shared living is where an individual might live with a caregiver, and that might be a single person, like you see Caitlin and Jody here. It might be a family, it might be family with kids, it might be empty nesters, it can be any sort of family. Independent living is individuals who live on their own in an apartment, maybe alone, maybe with a roommate, and they have a caseworker who comes to help them with whatever it is they might need. It might be menu planning and shopping. It might be writing out checks and paying bills. It might be we're talking about how you resolve a disagreement with a neighbor, all manner of things. Adult family care is meant for families who have their loved one at home. It provides a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit of financial assistance to the families. And it also provides a case manager, social worker, and a nurse to come and visit the family monthly. So they're getting some support in medication management and connecting with other programs in the community. And then we have our group homes next. By this time next year, we will have 9 group homes. We're opening up a second one in Sudbury. We opened a Sudbury home in 2021. We have 8 current group homes and 43 people who live in them. You can see photos of our group homes here. They range in size from 4 to 7 individuals, and these homes are staffed 24 hours a day. So people always have staff with them, and they're meant for people who really are not able to be independent on their own. We work with them to learn some skills. We hope they'll be able to gain some skills and maybe move over to independent living. And the homes are I think lovely. Some of them are absolutely gorgeous, and they're all over in the community. 3 of them are right here in Concord. They're all in West Concord. Next. We also believe heavily in giving back. We have people that volunteer at Open Table, at Gaining Ground, and at a variety of other volunteer options. And we have a group of self-advocates that are very much into service and giving back. For years, they've done all manner of service projects. They've done pre-COVID dances where the fee to join the dance might be to bring a pair of brand new white socks, and those get donated to the prison. It might be a collection like they're doing this month, which is feminine hygiene products. For about 3 or 4 years, they've collected feminine hygiene products during the month of October, and those get donated to Open Table because SNAP benefits will not pay for feminine hygiene products, and women need those. This year they said, we're going to step it up. We have a new idea. We're going to give blood. So this is some of our self-advocates, and Kim, the coordinator, actually giving blood at Emerson Hospital. So these guys are fearless. Next slide. So some of you were at the Oasis opening a week or so ago. This is a new project that we just finished. It has an accessible serpentine kind of walking path, and it has 5 or 6 musical instruments along the way, drums and gongs and chimes and a xylophone. And it has a glider that has a bench seat on one side and a platform for a wheelchair on the other, so everyone can use the glider. And it has some additional picnic tables. So now, in addition to the things that we had, the accessible 3-hole putting green, the greenhouse, the sport court, we now have this lovely oasis, and this is the final piece in the projects that we did with our capital campaign. We're very grateful to the town of Concord for a grant from the CPA funds that helped to pay for this oasis. And interestingly, this pathway that looks sort of orangey in the photo is actually made from wood chips that get mixed with an emulsion in like a concrete mixer, and then it's dumped on the pathway and leveled out just like concrete would be. It dries overnight, and it's a firm surface that is wheelchair accessible, but it's comfortable to walk on underfoot. It's soft feeling to your feet versus asphalt, and it's water permeable, so it is a much more environmentally sound product. Jennifer Brook, the landscape architect who designed this for us, said this is the first time that this product has been used in Concord. So we're hoping other building projects will use a similar product. It takes a little time to make. It is a little more costly, but again, it's environmentally sound, and we're not going to have frost heaves because the water goes right through it. Okay, one more slide, and this is the last one. So this is a whole group of our self-advocates. And again, they're amazing. They approve policy. Anything that has to do with the people we serve has to be approved by the self-advocates group before before it ever goes to the board or anyone else. And they help us with reviewing all of our policies on about every 2-year basis. They act as hosts and hostesses for our activities. And I tell my board that they're my bosses, but these guys are my real bosses. So, questions?
Yes, questions for Ms. Goldsberry? Anybody? I mean, I just wanted to say that I really appreciate the Minuteman ARC's operation. The work you do is wonderful in the community, and that I've gotten to know some of your clients and the self-advocates, and they're wonderful people, and that there's a benefit beyond the employment to the employers and the clients and their ability to get experiences in the workplace. It's also just their visibility in the public. And so, I mean, many times I've seen the water basket fillers or the baggers at Crosby's, and it really creates a better tone, I think, in our community and of acceptance and inclusion. And I think, as your very first slide said, that addressing that as a dimension of diversity is key to our diversity, equity, and inclusion program for the town.
Sure. And I can put in a little plug. As you think about that Plan B for housing, we can help with that.
Okay, well, that does lead me to the other question that I had, because you don't dwell at all on funding. I assume it's not like just a take it for granted type of thing, that you have all the money you need to do these things.
No, unfortunately not. It's a struggle every year.
Yeah.
We do get paid by the Department of Developmental Services for the adult services. Department of Public Health pays for early intervention, and Mass Health pays for dehabilitation. And we do fundraising. You all, I'm sure, have heard of the Minuteman March. That's our biggest fundraiser. And we do a lot of applications for grants and so forth. But it's a struggle. It's funny, we talk kind of off the cuff a little bit about managing a budget like Minuteman's with 9 different programs is a little bit like playing whack-a-mole. This one's up and that
There's
one's
not
down.
enough for everybody, but then how do you,
Yeah. So it is a struggle, and we're most grateful for the support of not just employers, but the community in Concord and others that really help us to be able to achieve our mission.
And you had asked how we could,
Yeah.
I mean, you had suggested we could help by advocating for employment opportunities. Anything else that you would like us as a board to?
Housing, certainly. That's
Okay.
another piece of it. And I think supporting anything within the legislature that is going to help increase the wages, even though we made some significant gains in wages this year, and that was due primarily to funds from the employer tax credit that we'll be using to support those increases. It's still, it's hard for our direct care staff to be able to live a life, $18 an hour, although you can manage on it if you're a single person, it's not much. You're
Not
going to
much,
be living
especially
with
not in
1 or
Concord.
2 or 3 roommates and eating a lot of pasta.
Okay, I think I saw Linda first and then Terry.
Jean, thanks for the presentation, and it was great to see the Oasis, a beautiful, beautiful part of your recreation plan. I have a question about housing. If you could just say a little bit more about that in terms of who is determining the placement of the group homes and to what extent they might be self-supporting in terms of the clients who are in them? So is DSS determining the location of those group homes, or is it based on need that you identify? Okay.
Well, Department of Developmental Services provides the funding for those homes. It's not quite enough to run the home, but it's almost. And they select the individuals who will live in that home. Once in a while, if we know of somebody, we might be able to say, hey, would you think about this person to go into a home if there's an opening? And we do unfortunately have an opening in one of our homes right now because someone had a long-term illness and recently passed away. I think that there also can be other housing options for people that maybe don't necessarily need a lot of funds from Department of Developmental Services, that can be partly private pay, maybe again some public-private partnership sort of thing that can happen. And in our group homes, every single bedroom is a unit. So, having a Minuteman group home, having 3 Minuteman group homes, let's see. And
And if I could just
16 of the affordable units in Concord are Minuteman
Our group,
homes.
yeah, I believe we did lose some though recently, right? That's what I thought I heard.
Yes, that was not Minuteman's choice. I can explain it to you probably
Okay.
offline, but
Okay, sure.
that was not Minuteman's choice at all.
Okay.
So if you could just, sorry, if I could just have a quick follow-up, just briefly, who's initiating the placement of that home in Concord? I guess that's what I'm trying to get at.
So if we wanted to open another group home in Concord, if we could do it privately, we could initiate that. If we need funds from Department of Developmental Services, then they have to initiate it.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Terry?
Thank you for coming, Jean. I had the privilege of working with you as liaison for a couple of years, and then
Yes.
I had a wonderful tour of Minuteman Arc. It's a really amazing place. So I'm intrigued when you say, this year I'm the transportation liaison, and you have 33 vans. Are there any hours of the day or days of the week when the vans are sitting in the parking lot that we could be a partnership with the town, and that might achieve some of your goals also, that we can get more vans for both
Sure.
of us, and we can have more in-town transportation for everybody?
Absolutely. In fact, we explored that with the town prior to the pandemic, and then I think there were other issues that sort of took precedence. But many of those vans are used nights and weekends because they go to our group homes to get people out and about. But there are always at least, I'd say 8 to 10
Wow.
that could be used primarily weekends.
That's really interesting because we now have a transportation planner and a transportation
Oh, yeah.
advisory committee. And so I think we should take another look at having a partnership.
Sure.
That would be great.
I'd be happy to talk about that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Thank you for coming. It's very good.
Yeah, thanks
Thank
for
you
that
very much
review. It's very
for
detailed.
having me and for giving me a nice chunk of time here to talk about Minuteman Arc.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
All right, now we're ready for our 7:15 item, which is the overview of the residential exemption with a discussion of any potential FY23 implementation with David Carr, the Chair of the Board of Assessors, and Meredith Stone, the Town Assessor. So please come forward and let us know. I think that, the idea was that we weren't going to take any decisions this evening, but really kind of refresh our understanding and get a sense of the board in terms of our feeling about this implementation. in preparation then for your coming back in November with the broader, revaluation process, right?
Yeah, well, first of all, I don't think there's anything I can say that's going to be nearly as significant as what we've just heard. So
Okay.
I hope you bear with me. And also that, of course, none of the things that were just as Chair has intimated, there's none of the things that are in here have been voted on by the board. These are not going to be recommendations.
Right.
Simply a fact-finding mission of what we've found so far.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we could go on to the next slide. So this slide is, and I won't dwell on this, this is the details of the law as written. And it's here for your reference, but I think if we can go on to the next slide, we'll actually be able to see a little bit, something in a little bit more of a summary form. So this says residential exemption applies to residential property only. It has to be voted by the select board at the classification hearing. We can assess anywhere from 5% anywhere from 5% to 35% of the average assessed residential value. It only applies to your primary residence, which you own and occupy. And this has to agree with your tax return. It's a value exemption. It's a little bit different from most of the other exemptions that we have. It does not affect the levy, of course. None of our exemptions do, and therefore any reduction in taxes collected on account of this has to be made up by a tax rate recalculation in order to balance the levy with what the town has voted to spend. So next slide. So again, this is a little bit more detail. What is included, single families, condominiums, some parts of 2- and 3-family homes that are owner occupied, and parts of mixed use properties. What's excluded is any rental or second homes, non-owner occupied. Some properties held in trust, it's possible for property in trust to qualify, but it's, I think, relatively unlikely because the trusts that people normally use for things like estate planning don't qualify. Apartment buildings don't qualify, nursing homes, group homes, and assisted living don't qualify. Next slide, please. So currently, and we do have a correction here. It's 16 municipalities in Massachusetts currently have the exemption.
Have there been new ones added of late?
Well, let's see. Yes, Oak Bluffs is, I think, the most recent one, and is Tisbury also a recent one?
In Tisbury,
Yeah, Oak Bluffs and Tisbury.
Okay,
are
thanks.
recent ones.
So going back one slide, I had a question.
Sure.
Where it says part of 2- and 3-family and part of mixed-use properties. What does
Right.
that mean?
So because you can have owner occupied, you can have somebody who buys a 2-family house to live in, and they'll live in one unit, and then
Okay.
they'll rent the other unit out.
Okay,
And I think that's, so I think they're able to get the exemption on the unit they're living in, but not
Okay.
on the whole property.
all right.
Now, we have accessory dwelling units now, so would it not apply to the accessory dwelling?
That's a good question. Now, that's something to look at. I'll make a note of that.
it's probably included in the value.
Yeah, it might be, because it's not the same as a 2-family home. But that is something, that is another detail to investigate. Oh, and another correction on this slide that we are looking at, Marlborough has rescinded theirs, so they actually should not be on the list. That's how we get 16, I believe.
How long ago did they rescind it? Do you know?
Is it?
It's
fairly recent.
current, recent.
Okay.
Do you know why?
No, that's actually good, something that I think I would like to know.
Yeah, I think it would be material.
Yeah.
We reached out to the clerk's office today, but they didn't know yet, the assessor's clerk, so.
Yeah. So that-
Right.
I mean, none of these municipalities is what I would call a peer community, but Marlborough is about as, close as you could, yeah, among those as you
Brookline.
get.
Right.
Maybe Brookline, but they're like in this different directions from one another.
Right.
Well, they have a pretty large, they have a much larger commercial base, I think, than we do.
Much.
Is a difference.
Yeah.
And that is actually one of the, I mean, there's also another recent revocation. Somerset did have one for many years. From what I could gather from their website, I think they revoked theirs in 2020.
What's a CIP tax shift?
Yes, that's something that we haven't done for many years in Concord, but it is done in some of our neighboring communities. The select board votes to, it's a commercial versus residential. The select board votes to take a split rate.
Oh, it's split, okay,
Yeah.
split, rate, got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
I mean, I think if anything in Concord, we would want to go the other way where we would have a lower rate for commercial than for residential, particularly if we adopted the residential exemption.
That was a question that I asked of the previous assessor, and he thought although you could have a split rate, at least the presumption was that the split rate would always be higher for commercial and
Does it
industrial.
have to?
I think he felt it did have to be, and that it might have required special legislation for us to go the other way. But that shouldn't be an impediment because we're very happy to be a creative and innovative in so many areas. Environmental and
You mean to ask for a
Yeah,
home
right.
rule petition
yeah, right.
to have a lower commercial rate?
Right,
I
so
mean,
that-
because I think there's merit
Yeah,
to doing that.
Well, if
I
you really-
assume that the concern would be like a race to the bottom, if you will, among communities if they were allowed to do that. So that's perhaps why.
Also, I'm not sure how popular, whether it would pass town meeting or not. I mean,
Okay, well, I'd be
Well,
willing
the-
to have the debate.
Sure.
The owners of commercial industrial property are not necessarily voters in the town.
No, they're not.
So groups of people who don't vote
No, it'd be
usually
more a question
usually
of
get soaked.
economic vitality, or it would be a question of, in this case, if the residential rates, it would have to be higher as a consequence of the exemption being in place. You would like to leave the commercial rate alone, if you will. That would be the philosophy that I could imagine.
I'm not sure that we have a slide to cover that, but I believe that actually is what would happen.
Okay, because so then effectively they would have a lower
you're
rate.
right, they
It would
would.
shift.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think, Henry,
Yeah.
you may not have gotten,
So what
Good
you're saying is
information.
that the increase only applies to other residential property.
it's basically the residential rate needs to be adjusted so that the total, revenue, it remains flat, with the exemption in place. So that means that the dollars per thousand has to be increased
But
for residential, but it's supposed to leave the commercial
Right,
alone,
right.
which would mean that it would have a lower percentage
in other
rate.
words, the total residential revenue would be the same.
Yes, the
But-
residential component of revenue remains the same.
Right, the rate is higher.
So I think that, okay, go ahead.
Yes, so we're getting, and actually that's leading then to the next few slides. We're going to
Okay.
talk about rates. Next slide, please.
Sorry to jump ahead.
No, it's,
I have a
we're quite good. I
bad
think
reputation for
you
doing
brought up
that.
an issue that we didn't cover here, so that's a good thing to keep in mind. So to the basic tax rate calculation, it's the basic formulas. We have to take it's basically the tax levy, the amount we have to raise divided by the total valuation, and $1,000 comes in because the rate is dollars per thousand. So for the fiscal 2023 tax rate, what we're estimating to look at, I think these are not final numbers yet.
They're not certified.
Right. Okay, these are not certified numbers, but they'll be approximately like this.
No, but it's eye-opening to see it's in the 12s
Really?
instead of the 14s.
What are we,
That's a big
1479
flip.
now?
We're 14, yes.
79.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
$2 less, but of course that means the valuations have gone up
It means the
correspondingly.
the valuations have gone up, yes.
It-
We are at over $8 billion valuation now, which is, I think,
Yeah,
much
so what's
higher
the
than before.
median?
They're getting to that.
All right, sorry.
Let's keep going.
So over $8 billion of value, we have to collect something over million in the levy. So you work through that calculation, it comes up to $12.66 per $1,000 of value is what we have to tax.
Sounds cheap so far.
No, yeah, well, yes, it's,
Sounds
we like this number.
Yeah.
Although it's not gonna really lower your tax bill because the
Right.
values have gone up.
Right, so our tax
it's-
bills will be higher.
But it's still a good number to be at. It's very far from 25.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes. 25 is the maximum,
Well,
right?
also, isn't this, but in the Commonwealth standards, a very, very low number?
It is a nice low number, yes.
I mean,
We
are
will get
there?
to- We will get to this in
Okay.
a few
We
minutes,
should,
but
we
yes,
should
I'd like.
fixate on this number
we'll
because
do a
it
little
doesn't have
comparison.
enough information.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's flip to the next slide, if I may. So this is this is basically where the value comes in.
So that's average, not median, but okay.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really average.
Yeah.
Right.
On residential value.
Yes,
Yeah.
the median is
Average
lower than this, but this
residential.
is how we get the average residential.
Sure, you
values.
need that to do the calc, yeah.
We've got all these different properties, and really the bottom line is that total residential RO, the almost 7.5 billion, sorry, divided by roughly 6,000 parcels, and that gives us about 1.25 million.
So approximately 90% of the residential property would be subject to the exemption.
Well, we're getting to that in a bit.
Okay,
I
yeah,
don't think we're
point
gonna
nine.
do that. I don't think it's gonna be quite that good. Next slide, please. This is still not, this is the amount that gets exempted. This is not, of course, exactly what you're gonna save in taxes, because it's simply
Value.
it's simply how much the value will get
Yeah.
shifted. But next slide, please. Now we get into something that we were just mentioning. It's the estimation of how many parcels would qualify. And we're estimating that somewhat, possibly more than 80%, but rough guess is something like maybe 20%, maybe 19 or 20% won't qualify. I did a little looking on the side and found that according to at least one source, Concord is 19% rentals, and rentals, as we already said, are not qualifying. So it leaves us with maybe about 5,000 people who would qualify out of the 6,000 in that category. Next slide, please. So reducing the value at 20%, everybody gets 20% off their value. So from the 1.25 million you get about $250,000 off. And we have total exemptions going down to the bottom. So roughly 1.25 billion exempted from all those properties. And next slide. So we put in the same 102 some million. Now we're dividing by, and the math gets a little trickier. This is we have to take the 8.8 billion and subtract the 1.25 billion,
Right.
and divide that into the 102 million and multiply by 1,000. It comes out to 1357,
Right.
Which is almost $1 more than before.
Yeah.
For 1266 without this. And that is, by the way, that's a 20% exemption. That's sort of in the middle of the range.
Yeah, nice working assumption, by the way.
Okay, so next slide, please. So here's how it would work out for a lot of individual properties. If you can somehow find a $400,000 property in town, you will get a very large tax break. And there are some.
There are.
Oh, yeah, there certainly are. Although
Two, yeah, two, both of them.
yeah, well,
Both of them would get this
I'm not sure
exemption.
I'm not sure there are any,
Concord
I know that there were properties below it, before 400,000. I'm not
Yeah.
sure there are anymore after the values will come out. We'll have to
Oh,
see.
that.
But yes, there are. So we've got properties certainly all the way from somewhere in the 400,000s up into the 4 millions and more. And as you can see, The break-even point comes somewhere between 1.4 million and 1.5 million.
Right.
And everyone in above that, which is not that far above above the average.
Right.
And everyone above that line is actually getting a higher tax, which comes out to about 40% of all properties in town.
Mhm.
Why is the yellow, what's the yellow highlight row?
Oh,
Why
that's
is that?
yeah, you know what?
It's almost the middle, the
Yeah.
average.
It was close to the average. That's,
Yes.
okay, got it.
So if we adopted this, this particular slide would change every year or every 3 years when you do the revow?
Would, yes.
Every year, okay.
It would have to be
Mhm.
recalculated every year because
Okay.
there would be a new total value, there would be
Mhm.
new, 20% would be a different number.
Right.
Um,
So these are FY '23, the current year.
These are our best guesses as to what the FY '23 numbers would look like.
Does the exemption have to be a percent, or did you just use that to
No, the exemption is always a dollar amount.
So it wouldn't be the $249,690, it would be around,
Oh, it's a dollar amount that, yeah, that could be anywhere from, what, 5% to
Well, let-
35%.
let them answer.
Yeah, I don't know if it actually has to be an exact percentage value. It must be in the range of 5% to 35% of the total value.
Right,
But I
okay,
think
but
it could be, I
250.
think it could be a specific dollar
That's what I was
amount.
asking. Okay, but you just use this for illustration. Got it. Okay,
Like Oaks
that's,
Bluff did 4%.
okay, okay, thanks.
But I suppose if you wanted to do $250,000 exactly, it could be done.
Yeah, because it's
I think it
within the
would be a
5 to
lot clearer
35.
to people.
Yeah.
It'd be a lot clearer to people if you
It
could.
sure would. Okay.
Now, the other question I have is, what is the sort of percent increase relative to the old tax, I guess, I mean, clearly it changes depending upon where you are in the spectrum, but let's say in the sort of worst case scenario, you got a $4 million house in this, there are more expensive houses in Concord, but there are very few, but 4 million, you previously were paying 59,000, now you're paying 66,000. So you're basically paying 10% more as a consequence of this exemption. And that's just in the $250,000 exemption. So your taxes for somebody else to get that
Oh.
exemption, this person's paying 6,000 a year more. Now
It's 10% more.
So
It's
it's
10%.
7,000.
sorry, 70, excuse
It's
me,
about 10% more.
10% more. Yes, 10% more.
Well, a little bit more than, it's more
12%,
than
something
that.
like
It's more than
that.
that.
But their old tax
Well,
was
it's-
60,000, their new tax is 66,000, they're paying 6,000 more for on a $4 million house.
If you did it on 10%
No,
instead of
second class.
20%, you would get a number for the lower value houses that would be much closer to the increase in taxes for the bond issues that we're talking about.
Right, this is a pretty big shift.
Yeah.
This,
10% would do the trick. Instead of 20.
well, if you did it with, okay, instead of 20%, 10% would be a 5% increase in the tax bill for a $4 million house. And then it would be, if you look at the reductions here, let's say you've got $1 million house, right? Then the reduction,
It's like a 10% reduction, it looks like.
well, that's with the 20%
Oh,
exemption.
yeah, right.
With the 10% exemption, it would be, less. It would be 5%. It's roughly a 5% shift, one way or the other, So, I mean, and of course, it's a wash for somebody who's in the middle.
Right.
Right? That's the other thing.
Did you say 40% of the houses are above that break-even point? Is that
That's, I think,
40%?
that's new information. We didn't have it in time to put on the slides.
That's
It
okay.
kind of makes
That's
sense,
okay.
though, that the
Yeah.
majority of people would get a cut, but a minority would pay more, significantly more.
Yeah, which is roughly what I would I would expect that a majority would be cut because of the distribution of properties tends to be heavier on the low.
Yeah,
It's a skewed distribution.
Yep,
yeah.
yep.
Right, so the average is more than the median, and
Yep.
and the break-even point is more than the average. But
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
So just to clarify, so Henry, when you're saying 10% would do the trick, you mean to make up for the school project? Is that what you're talking
Actually,
about?
yeah, the increase of about, I'm thinking $1,500 a year on a more or less average, so that if we're,
I
so
thought
if
it
we're
was
talk-
about 1,000 a year.
Well, but it's not gonna be. it's
Okay,
gonna
we
be
don't know
It's
yet.
gonna be
Yeah, all right,
1,500.
all right. I see.
So the
But
other thing is, of course, this doesn't have to be implemented all at once. You know, there could be a 5% exemption followed by a shift to 10, you know, to make it a more gradual change. So that's the other possibility. It's also a way to sort of try it out and see what people think.
Henry, I didn't follow your math as far as you're saying, what, you were backing into what would the percent exemption be in order to neutralize the impact of
Yes.
the
Of
middle
the
school?
middle school project for those that are below the median. Now, clearly, it's not going to be consistent. Those that have a very low property price are going to more than offset. I mean, the exemption would more than offset that.
But the 20%, which they based it on, I think is far more than would be needed.
Well, again, it all depends upon where you are in this spectrum. So,
Well,
you know,
actually, it's not, because it says the average house their tax would go down by about $800. And we know that the middle school is going to increase their taxes by about 14.
But you're looking at this table here and you see the
Right.
ones below the yellow line,
Yeah,
they're getting like reductions of $2,000 or $3,000 on the lowest value houses. So that's more than is needed for the lower value houses to compensate for.
for the lower, right, I went by the
Yeah.
average. If we just
Yeah.
wanted to say, how
Well-
would we neutralize the impact for the average home?
but
oh, well, then it would have to be even
It
higher.
would have to be
But
higher.
if you're talking about affordability,
Yep.
Yes.
the homeowners that have the
No,
lower
see, the
value
average is
houses are the
788
ones that you want to get
Okay, then we would have to figure out where,
insulate, essentially insulate
hear what you're
from
saying.
the increase in taxes that's caused by the debt service.
And I think that the concept, I think that you had raised some time ago about this was for those that had the lowest value houses to really shield them from the impact more than, let's say, your average house. I mean, what's the median now? The new median?
1.2 million, wasn't it?
It's, the new average median is 1,348,000 and change.
Okay, so sorry, average versus median.
Average.
So
Right,
the
but what's
average,
the
I thought we
median?
was 1.3, but what's the median? Where half the houses are less. It's lower.
This would be the breaking
Not
point
much.
for the senior means test.
No, it is. It's a big difference.
it's a different,
It's
Right.
clearly over 1 million. It used to be over 1 million.
Yeah, yeah.
It's already been over 1 million.
1,250.
Is the median, not the average. And you're saying the average is 1.3 something.
Yes, for FY '23.
Okay, got it. So what we're seeing with the yellow is the median, not the average.
And the difference is
no.
that the
no,
big
no, no, no.
outliers are on the
that's-
high side and not
Sure.
on the low side.
Yeah.
No,
The
We're
average
seeing
is
the average, the
1.248.
Is
That's
the average
value of the residential.
Right, we're trying to
Yes.
figure out what
what the median house is?
Yeah.
If you
I mean,
could
that's
look
usually
that
a
up and
key
get
item.
back to
That's a
us.
really key item for,
Yes, because we're trying to figure this out.
because that's when we're calculating things like the impact of the school, we do it in terms of the median house.
That's right.
And the number they've been using pretty consistently is about 1.2 million.
It seems awfully close to the average here. Usually the average is quite a bit, is
Right.
materially higher
Right,
than the
I
median.
think 1.2 million was last year before they did the reval,
Exactly.
so.
Yeah, I
maybe if
suspect
you
that
could check-
1.3 is more like
You're
it.
right.
I think it's one.
I mean,
Okay.
it's the idea. I mean,
It's a
there's
good
Yeah,
idea.
yeah,
everything else to
yeah.
sort
good
out,
It's just
but-
that we just
but the
need a little more
concept
data.
kind
Oh,
of-
yeah, yeah.
It's a
yeah.
good idea.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Well, I would like to,
So yeah, now let's hear the editorial position of the Board of Assessors and
Well, I
the
would have-
Assessor's Office.
I was just going to say, I actually find these percentages quite interesting myself, and would like to look into them further. I had to thank the Assessor's Office for giving me as much help as they were able to give me on preparing these slides, given it's a reval year and all. But yeah, I think I could think we could take these numbers and try them a
Crank
few
out
different ways.
some, crank out some
Yeah,
percentages.
and that's something that I was hoping to do in time. I just,
Because it would be interesting to see, like, all right, there's already going to be a, an increase in the tax for just your median taxpayer absent any, shift. And then adding in the exemption, then to see. So it's sort of like 2022 FY tax amount, right? 2023 if we didn't do the exemption, and then 2023 if we did. And I think it's okay to use your 250,000 as,
although
I think that was a nice round number. I mean, in that,
I also do like the idea of let's see if we
Do it
just-
less,
if
do
we
it
just took the
10%.
median house and estimated the effect of the CMS project and then tried to offset
Yes.
that. What would
Right.
happen?
Exactly.
Okay.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, that is a
I have a
specific-
feeling you're going to end up with a big number.
But it's a specific guideline that we can investigate.
Yeah, but that's going
We
to,
should look at it.
yeah, but I have a feeling then that would really hit hard in the upper ranges.
I'll just have to find out how much from someone
Okay.
what the impact of the CMS project will be, but I'm
Yeah.
sure those numbers will be available.
Because this was some of the calculation, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, we did, right, we did, as we did point out, there is a slide that gives the percentage on the
On the 5,
on
10,
the average
15, and
thing,
20.
but okay, but it's,
A little spreadsheet, we could do some nice what ifing on this.
Okay.
All right, yep.
let's, but let me just try to get through the rest of these things, if we can.
Sure.
Next slide. There's a question about the impact on the senior means tested exemption, which is based on the tax bill being greater than 10% of the income. And of course, the exemption would, this new exemption, if we had it, would reduce the tax bill. So there is a possibility that we would actually be phasing some people off of the senior means test exemption.
Right.
Although only apparently we would have to go pretty high on the exemption in order to actually lose people from the
Okay.
senior means tested exemption.
Yep.
So we got the summary there. I think there is, I may be skipping ahead a slide, but there one thing that was, no, sorry, let me just continue. Because there's some more on that on a later slide, but I'll let that speak for itself when we get there. Next slide, please. So yes, this is where we compare ourselves to the neighboring towns. Now,
It's a good slide.
so these are last year's numbers because we don't have we can estimate our numbers for this year, but we cannot estimate the other towns' numbers for this year. So I think it's only fair that we compare our last year's numbers to their last year's numbers. And so we are not quite as low as Lexington. We were not quite as low as Lexington last year at 1476. On the other hand, Lexington has a very significant
Commercial.
residential commercial split,
Right.
and that's I think the commercial rate is something like 27.
It's 27 and change, yeah.
Yeah,
So that's the CIP split, not the exemption, right?
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Lexington has used the CIP in order to.
I'm curious what percentage of their revenue they get from commercial.
A lot
That
more than we do.
Sure does.
Yeah,
lot more.
they have a much bigger. They have a much
Right.
bigger commercial.
In our
base.
case, it's like a rounding error. Yeah,
It's eight-
Yeah,
I think
theirs
it's
is
8. It's
much
8.
bigger.
8%,
It's
right?
8%.
I
yeah.
mean, right. I mean, they're able to get their commercial rate to more than twice their residential rate. I think when we had when we had CIP years ago,
And it makes
it was doubling the commercial rates, but it was hardly even affecting the
Right.
residential rate.
Yeah.
and it makes a big difference if you have commercial property on Route 128.
Right.
like-
Oh, sure. Oh,
Or
yeah.
Route 9 like Framingham.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
totally.
To offset.
Okay.
Okay, so next slide. We'll actually go through some, let me try to get through this quickly.
Can I
because
back
this-
up for a
yeah,
second?
sure.
I just want to, this slide that shows the tax bill.
Okay, so we can back up the slides, please.
Yeah,
Yes, thanks.
I just have a question. So if I look at this, what I'm doing is we're comparing houses, comparable houses, square footage
Right.
and features of the home
No.
across 4 towns.
Yeah, I think we
Yeah.
actually
Yeah, we
are.
are.
Yes.
Across
Yeah.
4 towns.
No, it's just it's the median, it's the average house in each of the towns. They're not necessarily comparable houses.
They're
Well,
comparable size.
They are-
square Footage.
Are they?
They're similar.
On this chart.
On this chart, okay, this
No,
chart
it's
is
just
not
the
designed-
it's
no,
just
this
the
chart is-
average
you're right,
value,
this chart is
which
not
could
designed that way, but-
reflects the
Okay,
housing
okay,
stock
okay,
of the
just wanted
town,
to-
which is
Let's,
very
um,
different in Maynard's
yeah.
case than Concord's, I can tell you.
Let's, actually, you know
Okay,
what?
so you're not
I
getting,
think actually if we go on to the next few slides, if we actually do compare I think you're actually correct, that these are not necessarily comparable houses, because
No,
the next 4 slides are attempting to compare
yeah,
comparable
Okay.
there
houses.
you go.
okay.
So if we can get onto those, so on the next page, so we've got a typical Concord, well, this, I think this is below median, but it's a not,
It's a below
not
median.
an atypical house.
Got it.
And so you've got and so basically their tax bill is a little under 14,000 for 2,400 some square feet. Next slide. So that's Acton, again, tax bill, a little under 14,000 for 2,400 square feet for a similar style of house. And if we go on to the next slide, we've got Maynard. Now their tax bill is lower. It's under 10,000, about the same size and style of house. And if we go to the next slide, we've got Lexington. And again, so their tax bill's a little bit lower.
The house is a little smaller.
It's a little bit smaller, but I think it's still comparable. And I think what we're looking at here is the difference is their very hefty CIP shift.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 But even with that, they're close to the taxes you have in Concord. Okay, so now we can go on to the next slide. Unless there are questions about the comparisons.
No, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So some of the things to be concerned about, and these are practical concerns and not necessarily. Some of them are practical. Some of them are things you might want to consider as policy measures. But we would have 5,000 parcels to investigate in order to implement this. So that's going to be a considerable amount of staff time. In fact.
I mean, can't you just wipe off the ones that are single family? I mean,
Not really,
No.
because you don't know whether they're really owner occupied.
But can't you just run the voter list against the real estate tax list? And it's not going to tell you where people live?
Yeah, if they're,
And that's going to deal with
yeah,
almost all of the residential situations, because if you run the voter list against the real estate list, you just have to look at the ones that don't match. Because the voter list shows you residents.
yeah. I have been assured by people who actually do this thing that it takes about twice as much time to investigate a new deed under the residential exemption than it does without it. So I don't know exactly all the details of it, but it's presumably it involves more than just checking the voter lists.
What about where the tax bill is sent to? Like if it's sent to New Hampshire, then it's not owner
That
occupied.
doesn't really prove it. They have to prove their domicile. They have to show that their excise tax is registered here, that they pay income taxes to Massachusetts and not to Florida, their Homestead Act. And so a lot of people have many homes, in different areas. So you have to really research it.
So it would be roughly the, well, actually that's assuming we only look at the ones that we think are eligible, as opposed to trying to hunt down the ones we think are not. So you are looking at an implementation time of at least of a year. That is why, well, as I said, the board has not voted on the recommendation for this year yet, but that fact alone is probably going to sway a recommendation that we do not do it this year. We need quite a bit of time to gear up for it, including.
Could you ask people to fill out applications under oath with the necessary information, similar to what you do for like getting an absentee ballot? So you could have all that information, and if people didn't fill out the application, they might not be eligible for the exemption.
Well, everyone does have to apply.
to get it.
Yes. You do have to fill out an application in order to qualify for the program.
Even single-family homeowners, so every homeowner.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's just not automatic.
No.
So,
And I have been told, well, we've been trying to call around to various people who do this to find out what their experience with it was. The one response that we've gotten so far, which was very prompt, was from Barnstable. Yes. I think we had a particular in there, so that's
Oh,
I think what we
lame.
got.
I just figured that out.
Yeah, and we already know that position, so.
Yes, but just in terms of just in terms of factual, not setting aside other things, just a factual. Okay, now that you've actually done this for a year, what's it like? And that's where that takes twice as much time to do the deed comes from.
I see.
And also, apparently, there are people who every once in a while somebody comes in and says, "Oh, I didn't know I was eligible for this. I've been paying the full rate for years."
right.
Fill out the application and get on the program.
Okay.
So what is the year when the middle school impact would start to be felt? Is it FY '25 or '24?
24, FY '24, I have it right here.
I mean, in a
It's-
minor way, we're already
peaks.
starting, right?
Right,
But-
not the minor way, the first
Yeah,
big borrowing.
this is the memo, well, actually,
Good.
it's from you.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I don't remember without looking at
Yeah,
that. I
it's-
mean,
it's
it's over the
2024.
next 4 years.
FY '24.
I think you said 80, this year, no, and 23 was going to be like 18 million.
12 million in '23,
Yeah.
and then it
12
ramps up over the next 4 years.
It's FY '24.
Yeah.
Okay, so the reason that I'm asking is if it takes the assessors a year to implement, and we're already in FY '23 right now, so that's why I'm asking this question, because if we can't
Yeah.
do it for this year, we might want to really think about,
Yeah, I think that this is one reason why I don't expect this meeting to be the last word on this during this fiscal year. I do intend to. I've gotten a lot of interesting feedback here, which
right.
I think we
So
can
what
look
I'm
into.
thinking is when you come in to set the tax rate in a month or 2 months or whenever it is, that, we may not be ready to do anything immediately, but.
Well, it seems clear, we're not going to do it for
Right.
FY '23. We can't.
But
Yeah.
that
Physically
we
can't.
already could be planning for FY '24 if that's what the board wanted to do, if that's what the assessors, if we, so, because that's, FY '24 is really coming up fast now.
And the response we've gotten almost from all sides this time around seems a lot more positive than the times we've discussed this in the past.
Well, I would say I'm not necessarily hearing an endorsement.
Right, we don't know
here.
yet. We're
It's
still- we
just the
still can't get
presentation
through
is a
this
little bit
page.
more just neutral,
But
Yeah.
at
factual.
least David says it's interesting. That's pretty good.
Yes. Well,
Like when you say a year to implement and could be costly, so you're talking about a lot of staff time,
A
right?
lot of mailers, mail
Yeah.
postage.
Right, so it might be good,
additional staff.
if you have any kind of an estimate on that. Are we talking about $10,000 to implement, $100,000 to implement, some kind of ballpark
Yeah.
idea of what we're, are we gonna
well,
have to
and you have an
hire?
upcoming meeting of the.
Right, are we
board.
gonna have to hire 10 new people temporarily or what?
No, but it might be very possible that there are consultants or accountants
Right.
who we could hire as contractors to perform.
I would
to work
imagine,
for us.
I would imagine for the initial onboarding of 5,000 new properties, you would want to hire some temporary consultants and maybe some permanent staff to maintain it after that.
Right, so it'd be interesting to find out what ballpark we're talking about.
Good. Anything else for
So
today,
yes,
tonight's
there is
discussion?
there's some concern that that will be, there's, well, impact of finances, I think there's a little bit of a concern, especially in the first year, that we don't know how many people will qualify, and so we don't know.
Yes.
It's really, it's going to be very tricky setting the tax rate the first year, because we'll have probably have applications coming in after the tax rate's already been set.
It may affect the overlay.
Yeah.
Oh, right. That's why we have the overlay.
Yes. Yeah, I think our overlay is pretty healthy right now, so that's at least a good.
That's a good thing.
That's good. If we did not have a healthy overlay, that would be much more concerning.
What is the overlay right now?
I know I'm pretty sure it's over 1 million, but we have taken
We
some
used
chunks out of
some,
it recently.
right?
Yeah, I thought it was more than that,
Yeah, me
even
too.
with the chunk taken out.
Me too.
I think it's probably more like 2.
Yeah, that's what I was
Okay,
thinking.
thank you.
They took 1 million out because we were way up there,
Yes,
and
we're way up there. And
That's still really high, though,
Yes, it is.
2.2 million.
It is.
Okay.
so far I haven't heard anybody looking to poach it this year.
Yeah, but,
Um,
well, if we're considering this, we might be poaching it for this.
Okay, yeah. All right.
Okay, so I think there are a couple of things that are possibly, now the first 3 things are things that we can solve with money and staff. The next 2 things I'm not quite sure how to solve: the renters and the trust-owned properties.
I mean, rental rates are market rate. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, there are more apartments than just Concord. So, you know, people if they're renting, those costs have to be a market-based cost in the end.
In other words, what it costs the landlord does not affect,
Not necessarily.
at least not directly. The landlord is pretty much going to charge what the market will bear. And
Right.
that is what the market will bear, not what the costs of the landlord are,
Right.
up to a point.
Up to a point.
And then the other thing about trusts, most residential property that's held in a trust is not really a trust. They're nominee trusts, which are actually title holding entities. Actually, they're title holding non-entities. And I don't know what the definition of trust is, but they're not really trusts. They call them trusts.
They have to be a trustee and a beneficiary to approve.
Yeah. But I'm sure there are many types of trusts in Concord, and that's
Yeah,
one of the things.
But I'd say almost all of them are the type of non-trust. Trust or trust in name only. Is there such a thing?
I don't know. All right.
Well, you can be a legitimate trust and still qualify. It has to be a very specific type.
So I think we
So we-
probably should wrap up quickly because we are over time.
Okay, yes. Okay, so a couple of things that have been noted that no community yet has taken on both the senior means tested exemption and the residential exemption.
Is there any legal
It's
thing to
not
prevent it?
clear. It's not clear. There's,
They would have to write.
at the very least, I think from what we've heard from the DOR, at the very least, they would have to rewrite some of their forms because they don't actually have a place on your form to put both of them.
Huh. Okay.
But we're only talking about 37 or fewer people. It's not like hundreds of people involved.
But it still has never been done, so it's just like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a technicality.
Right.
And we don't have a history of the municipalities that have done this have had a relatively much lower percentage of their property value in the owner-occupied single-family residences.
Yep.
Which I suspect, although I have not been able to verify yet, that most, if not all, these communities actually see that if you get into the program, your taxes are less than if the program hadn't existed, unlike us where 40% are going up.
Yeah.
Okay, so next slide, please. Next slide is just a rough, I give you a rough idea of where we are. So there's So it's a bunch of communities centered around Boston that have done this. I think we have taken Marlborough off of this map. And there's a few communities scattered down on or near the Cape that are basically done it for.
So which are the communities that look like they're kind of near Marlborough? It's hard to read on this map. It's
Yes.
southwest of Boston there. No.
The ones-
there's
the
Are you
some-
talking about the one at Somerset down by the Rhode Island
All
border?
these ones right here.
Somerset, which should not be, actually, no, Somerset should be off of this. I think this chart is out of date because
Yeah.
Somerset.
I think you're just looking at Brookline.
No, south of
Yeah.
Boston, all these ones.
Yeah, basically.
Watertown.
Outside of the Boston area, it's basically the Cape and Nantucket.
Okay, so this area that's southwest of Boston, you're saying that's Watertown and Somerville?
Brookline.
Well, it just doesn't.
Waltham is the western one
Oh,
there.
okay.
It's one big blue blob in the.
Yeah, it looks like it's a lot farther from Boston on that map, like it's,
If you're looking at the little blue one way south of Boston, that was Somerset, and actually we should have taken that one off. I think that is Somerset, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they were recently revoked theirs. That's why it's
Okay.
still on there. So it's really just the blue blob right around Boston and
The Cape and the Islands.
Cape area.
Okay.
Okay, so last slide. So basically, and this I think you probably some of you have seen this before since it was the conclusion of an earlier talk. But basically calling an exemption it's different from other exemptions. It's actually a significant tax shift between properties, or would be for us. Giving the upper portion a higher bill and the lower portion a lower bill. And well, okay, taking Mr. Dane's advice into account, we don't know how much the penalty would be for lower income renters, but taxes do tend to distort supply and demand. So we would be increasing the taxes on rental properties.
Okay. So any other questions or comments from the board?
well, I think that last bullet point was.
That's the one we discussed a few minutes
Yeah,
ago.
we're.
Right, but
we're
that was
debating it.
why we really decided, I think, last time not to do it, and the time before, because we thought it would hurt the people that we want to help with, with affordable housing. So I guess the question is whether you think rent is more market-driven or whether this really will penalize low-income renters in apartment buildings.
Or possibly would cause landlords to take their properties off of the market.
Can we find out from the other towns that have done it?
Although our circumstances are quite a bit different. I think, as David's pointed out, that first of all, homeowners in general, in every other case, had their taxes reduced. But the second was, the whole point was to increase the levy on apartments in those places. So, places like Boston that have a lot of student housing that's, non-resident, so that, and then places like the Cape that have vacation properties and luxury rentals in Boston too. Those are all, what they're trying to do is shift the tax burden to those people. Essentially non-voters, but also the means to pay. That's the other theory behind it. Here, the whole philosophy would be one of the means to pay is residents that, in theory, own more expensive properties. Though that's not necessarily the case. That that's the issue with property tax. It's not necessarily aligned with income.
So actually, what I think the economics are, having been somewhat involved with, as a landlord and with landlords, what happens since the rents you charge really don't have a lot of flexibility. So if your costs go up, at least in theory, the value of the property goes down because they generate less net income.
Yes,
And
yes.
therefore, so I don't think it's the tenants who pay. I think it's
The owners.
it's the owners.
It's onerous.
It's onerous, yes. Not tendentious.
Okay. Any other comments?
So the
Okay.
next time we see this
So-
group would be
Well, I think it's, no,
no,
right, was that November
28th?
28th? Okay.
So we'll have the answers then to, great.
Right. And again, I think even then, if we, at that time, we're going to make some determination about our
Yep.
desires,
Yep.
it would probably be relative to our saying, could you prep this for FY24? You know, we wouldn't be saying implement it for FY23. It would be asking for an impossibility. So that, you know, I think that much we've gotten clear tonight.
And at the classification hearing, we will have about 1 month's additional information since it's going to be about.
Yeah.
So.
Great.
Okay. Okay. Thanks very much.
And the information's going to come back in a new format?
Yes, we'll get new information next time. We're going to get some percentages. We're going to get some medians. We're going to actually have definitive information about what the assessment for FY23 is going to be. So I think we will have more information to work from.
And
And then I
actually-
also would recommend that those of us on the board, that we talk to the public and you get a sense, I think, of what that would look like.
Right,
for
and
people.
I'd like to know how many residents are in these large apartment buildings, if we can find that out.
Close to 900? 864 was the last number we had.
Okay.
That's a significant number. That's
Out
interesting.
of 17, 18,000. Okay. All right. Thank you. And now on to our next item, which is the discussion of warrant articles for a special town meeting that's scheduled for January 19th, 2023. And these items are coming before us because various groups, would like to put articles on the warrant, but really don't have standing to be able to sponsor warrant articles. I mean, clearly there's always the petition warrant article route that someone could take, but we do have that standing. And so we've been asked to evaluate these three possibilities. Okay, so the first one is the fossil fuel free infrastructure bylaw. So the town passed this previously. I don't know, do we have someone that would present this or do I just review it?
You can.
Okay, so that we passed, it was very broad support in town. And then subsequently, of course, there's now been legislation that allows up to 10 communities, and it seems like Concord is among those that might qualify here. There's still some ambiguities, but then when it comes to the terms of that legislation, they differ in some minor ways from what we passed as a town meeting, a bylaw. So the idea here would be to true up the language with the language from the state legislation. The other thing I want to mention is I had a discussion with the town moderator about these proposals, and while I had initially had some misgivings about adding things to the warrant, she mentioned that, of course, depending upon how the public hearing goes, that if there isn't any controversy or public feedback on these, then they could go on the consent calendar.
Right.
And so therefore, they wouldn't necessarily take any time at all, really, out of town meeting, special town meeting. So actually, when I look at all of these, they all look like candidates for that to me. So anyway, for each of these then, we would need to decide and vote whether we want to place this on the warrant. So for the first one, the fossil-free infrastructure bylaw revision, any discussion? And again, it's not, I think we could have a separate discussion about what this board's position is on each of these articles. This is really about whether to have this placed on the warrant as a select board article.
I think it's pretty much their decision, but I would be concerned that since the priority in the choice of the 10 pilot cities is based on the priority of the filing of the home rule petitions, is that I'd be concerned as to whether or not we lose our priority by coming up with a new version of the home rule petition. But that's not, I don't know if that's my concern.
I think that other towns that had any differences are also voting these. So I think there's the other feeling that, well, if we don't true up, then we might lose our place in line because there are ambiguities or differences in what the town voted for from what's being offered.
And as I pointed out last week, as far as the environment goes, which 10 towns get to be fossil free has absolutely makes any difference on the worldwide fossil fuel
Well,
issue.
I think actually, ironically, that if we yielded to Michelle Wu to do this for Boston, it would actually improve the environment, right?
Yes, so I don't
So
really see
that said,
I don't see the benefit of us being one of the 10.
Well, I think it's really just the commitment to implementation, and I think that we do have that here.
It's symbolic. Okay, I get it.
And what is the date of the special town meetings? Is it January 19th?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Are we ready for a motion?
Any other discussion? Okay.
Okay, move to approve the inclusion of an article prohibition on the expansion of fossil fuel infrastructure for new construction in the special town meeting to be held January 19th, 2023, which Article 31 was approved at the 2021 annual town meeting with subsequent changes recommended by town council in order to maintain compliance with state law.
Second.
As shown in our packet.
Second.
By Linda. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Now let's move to the next item.
And on that one, I will abstain from any comment or vote because I am a director of a statewide organization that has taken an official position on this matter, so I will not participate.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dane. So this is the home rule petition that we had placed in front of the legislature to request that we be able to implement a real estate transfer fee. And that we need to refile with some changes in order to, update it to meet the current circumstances. So once again, this was something that previously passed, I think, with very strong support at town meeting. I think the main question that I had asked was whether it made a material difference to take up this matter at special town meeting versus annual town meeting, because it's only 3 months later that we have annual town meeting. And we did get a letter today that described the reasoning for accelerating that decision. So any discussion of that matter?
What we're talking about now is, should we sponsor it on the warrant?
That's right.
Not the merits of.
No,
Okay,
right.
just wanted to be clear.
That's right. Whether we would add this to the warrant.
Yep.
Okay.
Move to approve.
Well,
the-
and
oops.
I don't know if we want
Oh.
any other comments. I don't know that we need them for.
grab defeat from the jaws of victory.
Okay, go ahead.
Keith Bergman, 56 White Ave. And actually, my property would benefit by the maximum residential exemption, should you
Yes.
choose to do that. So,
Yes.
but please don't, because it
He's one of
would
the
hurt
two.
the renters. I'm chair of the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust. We took a good look at the 2 home rule petitions that were passed in 2019. We were not in existence at the time that those were drafted. We saw some perfecting amendments that we would want to offer, which I think I would describe the whole thing as we're trying to reduce the time horizon that's involved here, not only in getting this matter back to the legislature anew, with the hopes that, you know, maybe with the new administration, these bills might stand a better chance of being enacted. But because as a participant in the regional effort of other communities going for real estate transfer fees, we saw that the proposed statewide bill would not require adoption by a ballot question. And so, to bring to your attention, what we're specifically looking at is that these bills, along with, as would mirror the statewide bill, that it would require 1 vote by a town meeting after it's enacted by the legislature, 1 vote by a town meeting, either an annual or a special, and not a ballot question. Then I think that frankly could knock off 2 years on how long it might ultimately take to
implement.
To get implemented if we were so lucky that the legislation passed, but it passed a month after annual town meeting, and you've got to wait for the next annual town meeting, and then you've got to wait for a ballot question following that, then it gets us further and further down the line, and we would actually prefer to shift our funding source from the annual $500,000 per year at town meeting to this independent source. So the sooner we get there, the sooner we can wean ourselves off the other.
Yeah.
So thanks
Okay,
very much.
thank you. Mr. Bergen.
I have a question. While you're here, Mr. Bergman, when would it be determined the percent of the transfer fee? And then my follow-on question would be, do we have any estimate of how much money we would actually raise annually?
The transfer fee is in.
You might want to step back to the mic.
The transfer fee is, the amount of the transfer fee is in the bill.
Yeah.
1%.
1%.
Of the purchase price exceeding, and we're proposing exceeding $1 million.
Yeah.
Rather
That's one of
than
the updates.
$600,000 that had been there. It would be a question, though, if the statewide bill were passed, it would be sort of a range, and you'd have to identify what the range is. The Affordable Housing Funding Committee in 2019 had estimated that both of these home rule petitions would raise $2.6 million per year, and we have not revised that revenue estimate in the last.
But it would probably be more now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be.
But I mean, that's more the scale of revenue we
What we
need. Yeah, that's better. That 500,000 is.
Well, I was the observer to that committee when it was formed way back when, and I think that estimate really could be polished a little bit more to get it closer to.
I think
Richard?
that's a good idea. We haven't.
Would you like to make a comment?
Yeah, Rich Healy, 347 Lexington Road. I do have the database from 2016 to 2020 of all the sales in Concord, and I ran it with a $600,000 amount, and it's about 2 million or a little more, just from the transfer fee. If it's important before the debate, we can get the.
I think it would be important
I
for
would like
the public
I would
hearing.
like to know that, yeah.
It's very important to have
The
good
number.
updated data.
Great.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thanks for your question. All right, now I think we're ready for a vote.
Move to approve the inclusion of an article, real estate transfer tax for affordable housing in the special town meeting warrant to be held January 19th, 2023, which Article 25 was approved at the 2019 annual town meeting with subsequent changes recommended by the Concord Affordable Municipal Housing Trust Committee and is otherwise included in the board packet.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Note that I
Abstention.
have.
And one
abstained.
abstention, yes.
Okay.
All right. Now we're moving to the next one, which is the building permit surcharge to fund the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust. So, I mean, this is basically just a different funding vehicle. So I don't know if we need any further discussion. Do we need?
Well, again, I think we just need some updated numbers to,
Figures, right.
you know.
Of course.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Any further discussion?
No.
Then can I have a motion?
Move to approve the inclusion of an article, building permit fee surcharge for affordable housing in the special town meeting to be held January 19th, 2023, which Article 26 was approved at the 2019 annual town meeting with subsequent changes recommended by the Concord Affordable Municipal Housing Trust Committee and is otherwise included in the board packet.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thanks very much. So,
One quick comment. I do think that these last two might end up coming off the consent calendar. We'll see. But
you mean if there's some, okay. Well, I
Well-
think the public hearing is a great
yeah, we'll see.
place to
We'll
see.
That's
I would encourage anyone who does want to debate these articles to appear at the public hearing.
correct.
Do we know when the public hearing will be, so we can have it?
Yes, it's on our calendar. I don't have the date on the top of my head, but
Is that calendar on the
it's published. It's
website?
on the town website. Okay.
I believe it's the 17th.
17th of November.
Wow.
Okay. I also should just alert people that I heard today, I think that Carrie passed this on, I also heard from Diane Proctor, that the Community Preservation Committee is going to be meeting this week and is likely to recommend another article to go on special town meeting, which would be simply to reallocate the funds that had been set aside for Christopher Heights to the Municipal Affordable Housing Trust. So it's really, I think, an administrative article because I can't imagine where else the money would go. But it is something that they would like to do, in a timely manner so that the funds, are usable if a project shows up.
That's $1 million, right?
Is it $1 million or $2 million?
Well, the
For
million was free
CPC?
cash,
Million from
Million.
CPC, that's right.
so it would be the million from CPC.
Yeah. Okay, and so that actually brings us to the next topic, which is the release of home funds previously committed to the Christopher Heights project. I want to just mention that while I've recused myself from other deliberations, I believe that in spite of an appearance of conflict of interest, I don't expect there's any conflict related to this matter for me. So, because it's simply returning the funds that had been allocated by the home program.
And so I can just make a quick presentation on this on behalf of Liz Rust, who had a conflict this evening. This is a request to release a total of $658,128 in home funds. You can see in the memorandum, some of these are local funds, almost 127,000 local funds, which are dedicated to Concord projects, even though it's not Concord revenue. And then 531,000 in consolidated pool funds, again, for the total of $658,000. There are multiple projects within the Metro West Home Consortium that are looking for additional funding for their projects. And so the request is that we release these since we will not be using them for the Christopher Heights project. These funds can only be dedicated to eligible low-income rental housing projects, and they have to be essentially shovel-ready or close to that. I'm assuming one of the questions you might have is, couldn't we set these aside for another project in town? But we are not able to do that at this time because these have to go to dedicated projects, not just to the Affordable Housing Trust or to be set aside for a future project.
Yeah, the last time we saw these, I think, was for the Commonwealth Ave proposal, right, for the $700,000 two-bedroom unit on Commonwealth Ave near
Yes,
Giroux Park.
right.
There was going to be, I don't know, 150,000 that was going to come from the home funds for that project that, of course, we didn't end up using because we didn't.
Right, and then I
approve the
think
project.
dedicated them or revoted them to Christopher Heights.
Yeah, okay. That's where they came from then.
What about Assabet Bluff? It's not far enough along,
Right. it's
It is
shovel-ready.
not. Yeah.
and there's no buy downs currently underway or anything like that that we can use it for. What would it-
Can it be used for a buy down, or is it for new developments?
You know, that I'm not sure. I know it has to be used for rental.
What about those two LIP projects we voted last week?
Those are not, those are home ownership, I think.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay,
We
great.
approved those.
Okay, and my last question is, so you said out of this 658,000, originally 127,000 or something came from Concord?
For Concord's allocated share of the
Right.
funding that comes through Metro West Home Consortium.
Okay, so that amount cannot go back to Concord because we don't have anything shovel ready?
That's correct.
Okay.
And the consolidated pool are all of the communities within the consortium that haven't been able to allocate their money, then there's an opportunity to apply. So you can see that at least for this particular project, we got a lot from the consolidated pool. And hopefully when we have a project, if it exceeds what is available to and allocated to Concord, that there would be an opportunity to apply for additional funding.
Okay. Linda.
Yeah, I do. This certainly makes sense, given the restrictions on the home funds. But I do have a follow-up question that I don't expect you to necessarily have the answer tonight, but I'd like a follow-up to this question. And that is, if there are known shovel-ready projects in the Rizzo community group that may also be applying for, that are known likely to be applying for the high readiness ARPA state funds. I'd like that as a follow-up question asked and answered. But otherwise, it certainly makes sense in terms of the home funds being reallocated.
Okay.
We don't have a project at this point.
Correct.
Right.
That meets the requirements. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
No, I'm fine.
All right. Ready for a motion?
Move to approve the town manager's release of $658,128 currently reserved home funds for the Christopher Heights project to be repurposed for general home funds use and as otherwise described in the town manager's memo dated October 18th, 2022, and included in the board packet.
Second?
Okay. That was a jump ball on that one. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
I have a question, Matt. While we're in the topic of reallocating money that was earmarked for Christopher Heights, and CPC is going to be moving their money to the Affordable Housing Trust, what's the mechanism to move the money from free cash? Should we be initiating an article to move it from free cash? to
Yeah,
the-
but I'd say
the
normally we do that
trust?
for annual town meeting. Yeah.
Why not this one?
Well, as a former finance committee chair, you probably felt in the past that people that try to make mid-year allocations of funds when there's no budget process that's been completed, it's quite annoying. So I at least I
Yeah.
would prefer that any significant money articles, other than, of course, I mean, this is a capital article for the school that's totally out of the process.
Oh,
But
well, so that.
yeah, that's sort of beyond the pale. But that for other kinds of spending, we definitely want to tamp that down and have it as, in the cycle, right? The regular cycle.
Good point. We'll wait and see how free cash is
Yeah,
doing
we don't
before
even know what
that's
free
right.
cash is going to be. I
Okay,
mean,
good point.
Okay, let's go now to nominations.
Okay, nominate Catherine Ryan of 109 Stone Root Lane to the Personnel Board.
Okay, thanks. And now to appointments.
Move to appoint Michael J. Ben of 747 Old Marlborough Road to the Public Ceremonies and Celebrations Committee to serve for a term ending on May 31st, 2027, and Alyssa Leupold Harduck of 455 Crestbrook Road to the Public Ceremonies and Celebrations Committee to fill the remainder of the term expiring on May 31st, 2026, and to waive the requirement of the Public Ceremonies and Celebrations Committee bylaw requiring that an appointee be a veteran as defined in GL Chapter 31.
Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Now it's time for our liaison reports. I guess it's just been a week since the last meeting, but yep, Mary, you'd like to go first?
I do have something I'd like to say. Last week, we voted to suspend the work of the White Pond Advisory Committee, and I didn't take that opportunity to thank them for the work that they've done and to recognize some of their accomplishments. So I'd like to take a minute to just publicly acknowledge that over the course of the past year, they've done significant things. One was the use of the APOD, which filters out, which seems to actually be working, knock on wood.
Yeah.
The other accomplishment they made was we have frequent and regular testing now, which was based on their urging, and they do small things like containers to catch the monofilament from fishermen. So these are all little things that they've done that have improved the quality of the water there. And I neglected to recognize those last week,
Okay.
which was
Any other liaison?
I do have a
comments?
small
Yeah.
thing. DPW, I watched their meeting. They have a great meeting. I could say a bunch about it, but I think the thing I'd really like to say is they were looking at their 5-year capital plan, and we've all seen their 5-year capital plan. It's very technical, stormwater and rolling, things like that. And what they're trying to do now is they're trying to maybe put a name to some of these projects. So it'll be this parking lot or this neighborhood. So so people will get a feel for how it hits them in their neighborhood as opposed to just an abstract number up on a screen. And I thought that was a positive way to approach the capital budget process. And
Okay.
that's it.
Great. Linda?
Yeah, I did attend another excellent round of CPC application interviews that the committee did. But most importantly, what I want to mention tonight is that we have a running list of vacancies for open spots on the number of committees in town, and we're particularly in need of someone for the planning board. Not that we don't need everyone for all the openings on these committees, but particularly we need for the planning board with
Okay.
the number of projects that come before them on a routine basis. So thank you.
All right. Do you want to go next, Terry?
The only thing I really attended this week was the Housing Production Plan meeting, which was really good on the 19th, and they're going to be continuing tomorrow night. Part 2. That's it.
Okay. And Henry?
I attended the meeting of the Concord 2025 Executive Committee meeting
Okay.
on Thursday, and we are planning to hold a public forum in the Goodwin Room at the Public Library on November 3rd at 7 o'clock in the evening to ask people to come and give us their opinions and their thoughts on what they would like to see as part of the celebration for the 250th anniversary. And we would like to get as good a representation there as possible. This is, I am told, is in the process of being publicized, but I still don't see it on the town calendar, so it's important for us to make note of it. And I'm going to start chasing the town calendar tomorrow. Also, I don't think we have all of the dates for other events of the year. I did attend the public ceremonies committee meeting on Friday after they were they got a quorum authorized. And my main objective there was to make sure that they were proceeding with the Veterans Day ceremonies. And that is, that appears to be organized and in process. Typically, but we still need some work there. Typically, we get a list from them of the various items that go on at Veterans Day, Memorial Day, the tree lighting ceremony and things of that kind that they should be bringing to us for us to review and approve. And I've got to start pressing them on that. We have 2 new appointments on that committee, and we are going to, we're working hard to fill the 2 remaining vacancies on it and get them better organized. They've filed no minutes since May of 2021, and that needs to be fixed.
Now, the tree lighting ceremony, I don't believe that that's in the purview of the PCCC.
Well,
I think there are just 4 events, right?
Well, what they said was that is mainly under the jurisdiction of the rec department and the Chamber of Commerce, but they play some role in moving people up the street for that ceremony.
Huh, okay. But I think it's an informal role then.
Yeah, but I'm still not clear what the date is.
Okay, because I thought there were 4 events that were in their charter. Yes.
Yeah, Henry, I have a question about the forum that you mentioned for the 2050 committee. Is that going to be a hybrid meeting? So that
we're looking into it. We're looking into it, see about determine the feasibility of it. You know how I feel about hybrid meetings, but there was, I think, a pretty strong sentiment for making it a hybrid meeting, and they're looking into just the mechanics and the logistics of it to see if we can.
Because I think if we want to maximize begin to maximize public engagement in this whole process, that would be important.
Well, yes. Well, my experience with hybrid meetings is like the hybrid meeting we're holding right now. If it is hybrid, nobody shows up. And that means there's no interaction among the people who are participating. But I am, I'm just an old-fashioned person, and the more the more the people who are more in tune with the times are working on bringing about change, and I think we may see change if it can be done, at least for that event. Then we're going to hold more of these, and I think our thought is that maybe we could try different methodologies and formats to get the maximum coverage.
Good, thank you.
Then there's me. I was away on a business trip all week, so I didn't attend any meetings in person or virtually, but I do want to pass along that the 60% reconciled estimate was published by the Middle School Building Committee, through the OPM, and that it is, and I don't have the number right in front of me, but it's basically increased the number from their prior estimate by about $2 million, which basically offsets the value engineering work that had been done since the prior estimate. So we're kind of back to where we started, and the committee is looking at other items that would not affect the project schedule of things that had been perhaps previously rejected, and has asked the professionals to look through the list and see if there's anything that could be reconsidered on that list. So that's And again, not having attended the meeting, that's secondhand information, but I just wanted to pass that along.
When are we
critical
gonna
project.
when are we gonna know what the number is?
Well, when we build the school. No, I mean,
That's what I
that's
wanna-
a flip answer, but
It is, and
so.
that's the wrong answer.
No, but it's I think the major milestones are this, that the 60% estimate by the accounts I've heard is considered to be a much stronger estimate than the design development estimate, because it really is built based upon construction documents. They're not finalized, but they're quite a bit of ways along. That the 90% estimate that is going to be published prior to special town meeting, that is the estimate that is used to test whether there's adequate budget to proceed with bidding. So if you have adequate budget to meet the 90% estimate, you can entertain bids. And then, of course, bids come in. You can't control what the bids will be. And if the bids exceed the budget, then we once again have a problem.
I think maybe what Henry is asking is, what is the number we're going to put on the warrant?
Right.
Okay, so again, I think that that is something that I expect that we would get. Well, we have already gotten an initial recommendation from the middle school building committee of 115 million, that they're meeting again on Thursday, and I expect that among the topics will include a discussion of whether that number should be adjusted based upon the 60% estimate being received. And if so, that will be input to us. I mean, again, I'm trying to think of how we get this on the.
Are we the sponsor of the article?
Yeah, so I do know, according to a discussion I had with Dr. Hunter, that it's the select board that is going to put the number in.
Right, but
but
then how do we do that between
Yeah,
now
so-
and?
I did ask if we should expect additional input from the middle school building committee after the meeting on Thursday.
Yes, but when do we have an opportunity to deliberate between now and, I mean, we need to vote it.
Right, on Monday.
I think it's a kind of a miss here. We need to,
And I,
On Monday.
I don't,
Monday.
I don't want to.
No, but it hasn't-
I don't want
when
to be
the warrant
responsible
closed?
for the number.
I thought this
Friday?
closed on this
Well,
Friday.
that's true.
We have to have a meeting on Friday or Thursday. We can't,
No, I think the warrant can close, but, I mean, we know there's going to be an article, but we don't have to
we can
vote
put
the
an article
exact
on after
number.
the fact.
Well, the moderator has her hand raised, so. I'm not
Okay,
sure
thank you,
if
Madam
it's
Moderator.
on
Please
this.
inform us what we have to do here because, yes. Carmen?
Hi. I actually had my hand raised for a different reason, but on this question, I think that you'll have the warrant article there. And by the time the warrant closes, technically, you should have a number in the warrant. And I believe that the middle school building committee has suggested 115 million as the number for the warrant article, and then you can move whatever number you would like to at town meeting. So
Well, that's clear, but what goes on the warrant, I guess then de facto has to be 115 million.
unless whatever is submitted by the deadline date is a lower number, and that could be, I'm not sure who's going to submit that article. It could be submitted by the middle school building committee. It could be submitted by,
Do they have standing?
if you're going to agree to put their article on the warrant, and then it's just a question of the language drafting, and yes, that they
But I
certainly
guess
do.
the concern I have is that we just took 3 formal votes tonight to put various articles, to sponsor warrant articles to put on the warrant. We did not take a vote for the one for the additional funding for the school. it would seem that we would need to have a formal vote to put it on the warrant if we were the body that was sponsoring it. If we're not the body, then there needs to be some board withstanding to submit the warrant article. And I don't see, well, first of all, it was not an item on our agenda for this evening, so we can't deliberate it this evening. So I think it's either we have a meeting, at this point, Friday, before the warrant closes, or the school committee has a meeting before Friday and submits it, or something. Or maybe if the middle school building committee can, then that's great, but I don't understand.
I don't think the
that-
middle school building committee expects to be submitting the warrant.
That's right.
article.
So again, in the past, we were the ones that did it.
Were we the ones who?
In the
who
past, we
submitted?
were the ones that submitted it. Yeah, and for the first one.
Isn't the only choice, it's either
Us or
us or a petition?
no, school committee and the
This-
finance committee could too, right?
I don't know.
Well,
Anyway,
Not gonna.
they're not going. Okay. So
Whatever the number is that goes on the warrant article, I don't want us to be the one that picks it.
well, and again, I think that 115 million is actually 11.2 million or something, because it's the additional funds, as the article will be phrased. It's not 115. That's the gross funds once you add the two
Isn't that a choice for
together.
us to make as to whether we amend the?
The motion on the floor is one thing. I'm just trying to make sure we actually have a process that gets us a warrant article.
Yeah.
so I think
Okay.
that's a meeting on Friday
It sounds like we have to have a meeting on Friday.
before 12:30.
Okay.
Okay, so via Zoom, I would recommend. Okay, I see Stephen Bader has his hand up. Would you like to make a comment at this time? I know we're not in the public comment, but this is kind of if it's related to this particular issue. No, it's not. So let's wait until public comment. All right. Okay, we're going to meet on Friday. So now, next thing is I want to acknowledge, hopefully it'll be a very, very short meeting. I want to acknowledge 5 pieces of correspondence that we received last week and over the weekend before this past Monday's board meeting. These things were received after noon on Friday, which is our deadline for being able to post correspondence. You can imagine that you can't do it right up to the last minute. But I do want to assure the writers that the board did receive this correspondence in advance. And so those are, all of them were on this topic of the Christopher Heights project, and they were from William and Susan Plummer, Mariah Walsh, Elizabeth Nake, the League of Women Voters of Concord, Carlisle, and Mothers Out Front. Okay, that brings us to public comment. So I do see one person who has his hand up. Please identify yourself and make your comment.
Good evening, Stephen Bader, 7 River Street. Tonight I'm speaking with my Friends of the Concord Free Public Library hat on, and I want to thank you for acknowledging our gift to the Professional Development Fund. And I also want to thank the town manager for mentioning the progress of the Concord Festival of Authors, which is in full swing. And to carry that to the last discussion, if you are looking for a way to use the Goodwin Forum and live stream from that site, we've been doing it for months. It is possible. And if you need help from us or from Minuteman Media, I'd be happy to offer that help to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bader. All right, seeing no other, Carmen, you'd like to make a public comment? Yes, please do.
Yes, 2 things. First, if you are going to meet on Friday, I would suggest to you that if you schedule your meeting for 12:15, you could probably order the warrant if you stay in session until after 12:30.
Does it
and
matter if we are deviating from the schedule, the special town meeting schedule that's published?
No.
Okay, thank you.
No, because there's no particular requirement other than the normal public meeting notice requirement to publish
Okay,
select board meetings. So that date on the on the special town meeting calendar is really there for general convenience of the public rather than any specific kind of obligation.
okay.
So if you need to adjust that, you certainly can, so you don't have to have the 2 meetings. Second, I just wanted to make a couple comments about the use of the consent calendar at special town meeting. And I just want to remind everybody about what our process is for the consent calendar. And the, the first thing is that nothing, I suggest to the select board what I am thinking about including on the consent calendar following the conclusion of the hearings. And we'll have to figure out when that's going to happen. And so nothing is proposed for the consent calendar unless it is entirely uncontroversial at the hearings.
Right.
And then in any event, anything that does end up on the consent calendar can be removed by we have been using of late 10 people, any 10 people who wish to remove it. And in prior days, we had actually any 5 people who wanted to remove it, and we could certainly go back to that. So, if there is a desire to discuss anything that ends up, if there is a desire for full deliberation on any article which does end up on the consent calendar at special town meeting, we will in no way deprive the public of the opportunity to do that.
Of course.
Make that note.
Right.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
While we have the moderator on, can I ask one question about the vote on the override, which is going to have to go to the polls after the town meeting? Is that a vote that would be subject to absentee ballots and early voting the way other elections are? Or would it have to be in person at the poll?
My understanding is it's an election like all other elections. This is really a question for the town clerk rather than for me, but my understanding is that this is an election like any other election, and it would therefore be subject to the same rules that state and local elections are subject to, which means, yes, you can have a mail-in ballot, and yes, there will be early voting and so forth.
Okay. All right. I think that concludes our public comment and also concludes our meeting. So thanks,
We're meeting
everyone.
on Friday.
Are we meeting on Friday?
Yeah, so I think that's sort of external to the
Oh,
mean.
okay.
We can easily
Do we
discuss
have a
setting a
for
time. But
Friday?
I think that Carmen's suggestion of 12:15 is great. I do think that I just need to be done by 1. And if we could do it via Zoom, it would be very helpful.
I'd like to move it up to 12 because
I would still need to do it via Zoom if it was 12. I mean, I guess I would have to move a business meeting to do it. Yeah.
I'm going to have to cancel my 50th law school reunion. but
Oh,
that's
no, my
okay.
gosh.
That's
Well,
all
you-
right.
we
No,
can
that's
do it without you, Henry. I mean, it's,
No, because,
I'm not sure I'm going to be there either. I'm going to be,
no,
you only need 3 to make a quorum.
I will be there. Don't.
I mean,
will-
it's not a,
I will cancel the reunion.
I don't think that these deliberations
It's
are
only-
likely
it's
to be
only-
that consequential.
It's only a couple of hundred people.
we're deciding what the amount of
next
the
year.
warrant article will be. Isn't that what we're doing?
Well, we're also ordering the warrant, but the amount of the warrant article is different from the motion that would be presented. So, it's just the number printed in the warrant. So anyway,
But it has meaning.
I don't want to get into the
But
deliberation.
before
it's
that
true.
meeting, we really need some kind of commitment from either the school committee or the building committee as to
What they would recommend.
what they want us, what they direct us to put in it, because I'm not responsible for that number. They are.
I think we already have their direction. though.
Well, I think that was prior to the 60% estimate. So I think it's worth asking again on Thursday at their meeting. So
Because if we
I could probably reschedule my earlier meeting if you want to meet earlier, so that I just have to be done by 1. And ideally, again, it would be easier.
I think the ordering will go that will be pretty straightforward. It's
Yeah.
the discussion
But
of
you
the.
can't do the
amount.
ordering until after 12.
No, I understand.
After 12:30.
12:30,
I
right.
understand. So your 1 o'clock meeting won't be a problem, I
Right.
don't think.
As long
It's-
as we conclude our prior discussion with.
Right.
It's unlikely that I'm going to be able to make this meeting, but I will try. I'm going to be
Okay.
Because-
traveling.
Yeah, so you would have to be by a Zoom. You couldn't attend any other way.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is a Zoom meeting, right?
I
Yes.
think it should be a
It
Zoom.
should be a Zoom. Yeah.
Okay. So do you feel like starting at noon is adequate?
I do.
Okay, so let's start at noon. And
And we're eliminating Monday night, the 31st?
that's right. We don't, well, it was never going to be Monday night,
It was
but
noon.
yes.
It was
it's-
noon on
Noon,
Monday.
sorry,
Yeah.
noon, yeah.
So
But-
that's gone. Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, this is for the clerk.
Have we ended?
No,
No.
We're done.
No.
The
Okay,
meeting.
we're
Oh, I thought we already
adjourned now.
adjourned the meeting.
Motion to
We're still
adjourn.
on the air, aren't
No, we don't have a motion. I just adjourned the meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we're
I
turning
said
off
we-
the mic.
Yeah.
We had
Have a
the-
good night,
I
everyone.
mean, all we just did was